From the sealed archives of the Promethean Plate, we unearth the ghosts of a broken age. An age before the Great Darkness, when the Great Crusade burned like a newborn star, and the Primarchs were brothers, not bitter rivals. We speak of a time when the name Horus Lupercal was a synonym for victory, and his legion, the Lunar Wolves, were the Emperor's most favoured sons. This is the story of their fall, not as it is writ in the grand histories of battle, but as it was etched into the very soul of their command. Before you lies a forbidden text, a relic compiled by the Remembrancer order before their dissolution. It is titled, The Soul of the Lunar Wolves, an anatomical study of the Mournival. It is not a history of conquest, but a diagnostic of decay. As the symbol of the wolf stands before the waxing and waning moon, so too did the Legion have its phases of glory and its inevitable eclipse. This study dissects the Warmaster's unofficial advisory council, the 4 captains who formed the Mournival. It examines what it calls their psychological ecosystem and the subtle architecture of doubt that defined their brotherhood. A complex web of loyalties that, for a brief, shining moment, elevated the noble captain Garviel Loken to the very centre of imperial power. But anatomy can reveal sickness as well as strength. To understand how the brightest legion in the Imperium could cast the longest shadow, we must first place the soul of the Mournival upon the dissection table. For it was here, in the heart of this brotherhood, that the first seeds of heresy found fertile ground. And so, within the rigid, documented hierarchy of the imperial military structure, an unofficial axis of power was allowed to form, an entity with no formal authority, yet whose influence, as this document from the Lunar Archive attests, would eclipse that of any Lord Commander. It was called the Mournival, not a rank, but a confraternity, a council of 4 chosen captains intended to function as the very soul of the 16th Legion. As the schematics show, they existed outside the direct chain of command, their purpose delineated by Malcador the Sigillite himself under the highest security classification. Their mandate was not to command, but to advise, to be the 4 captains' one ground for the Warmaster himself. They were to be the voices of absolute candor, the moral anchors tasked with guarding the Legion's heart against the very pride and ambition that fueled its greatness. To speak truth to the most powerful being in the galaxy, save one, requires a bond stronger than adamantium. But absolute candor is a double-edged sword. It can prune the branch that grows crooked, or it can sever the trunk entirely. For a legion built upon an unyielding pyramid of command, where a captain's word was law and a primarch's was gospel, the very concept was anathema, a private heresy, long before the true one began. It was called the Mournival, as this archival record from 006.M31 confirms. It was a council born of necessity, hidden within the 16th Legion. The ritual of induction was conducted in secret places, like the flooded, ruined sanctum you see here. By the light of a distant moon, or merely its cold reflection, candidates would swear a secular, blood-bound oath, not to the Emperor, not to the Primarch, but to each other. An oath sworn upon a bolter, their instrument of war repurposed as an icon of brotherhood. The ritual's purpose was explicit, to intentionally strip away the command hierarchy that defines Astartes' existence. As First Captain Ezekyle Abaddon decreed, "Before the men, you may refer to me as First Captain, but between us there is no ceremony. In the Mournival, we are equals." Here, truth could be spoken to power, unvarnished and unfiltered. A council of equals, a brotherhood of honest counsel. In theory, it was the Warmaster's greatest strength, a safeguard against the isolation of supreme command. But this sanctum of trust, This circle where rank was meaningless would prove to be the perfect breach point, for when one brother whispers poison, does an equal truly have the authority to silence him? But the Warmaster did not rule alone. To keep his own counsel true, to guard against the hubris that comes with unparalleled authority, Horus established an advisory body unlike any other within the legions, the Mournival. It was to be a council of 4, each a captain of the Luna Wolves, each representing a facet of the Primarch's own complex nature. Here, in this archival picked capture, classified magenta by order of the Sigillite himself, we see the survivors of that initial ideal. There is Ezekyle Abaddon, first captain, his face concealed by the grim visage of his war helm. He was the fire, the martial fury of the 16th Legion given voice. Beside him, a study in contrast, Tarik Torgaddon, his expression one of rare and easy levity. He was the soul of the council, a constant check against the grim seriousness of their duty. And finally, Horus Aximand, so like the Primarch in aspect that he was called Little Horus. He was the strategist, the cool and calculating mind, fire, soul, and strategy, a trinity of warrior brothers. But the Mournival was meant to have 4 pillars. This 4th, empty frame, bordered in the color of a fresh wound, signifies the first crack in the foundation. It is the ghost of Captain Hastur Sejanus, the diplomat, the voice of reason, slain before the Warmaster's new reign had barely begun. His death broke the delicate equilibrium, unbalancing the humors of the council. To function, the Warmaster knew he required a new 4th pillar to stabilize his closest advisors. A replacement had to be found. But as Horus sought to mend this fracture, to fill the void left by a beloved son, he remained blind to the far greater corruptions that were already taking hold, not just in the council, but in the heart of the Legion itself. How can one truly replace perfect loyalty? And what enters the soul when such a loss creates a hollow space? And so, within the council of the Mournival, there was one whose voice was not of counsel, but of the sword's edge. One whose temperament was classified even by Malcador the Sigillite himself as the choleric fire. First Captain Ezekyle Abaddon. He was the embodiment of the 16th Legion's martial fury, the raw, unyielding aggression that had conquered 1,000 worlds. As this archival entry reveals, his defining traits were aggression and pride, a meter shown perpetually nearing its zenith. He was the son who most resembled the Warmaster in his thirst for glory, yet lacked his father's diplomatic grace. Where Horus saw a puzzle, Abaddon saw a knot to be severed. He was the blunt instrument of the Warmaster's wrath, possessing a battle hunger that chafed at peace, and saw every negotiation as a delay to the inevitable, righteous slaughter. To cut to the quick was his only creed. Such a fire, so defined by unyielding pride, does not burn in isolation. It is a beacon. It does not wait for a cause. It burns in search of one. And in the gathering darkness of the Great Crusade, many forces were already drawn to such a potent, uncompromising flame. To call Tarik Torgaddon the sanguine anchor is to grasp the terrible weight he was tasked to bear. He was not an anchor of stone, but of blood and laughter, holding fast against tides of ego that could drown galaxies. This archival fragment, classification magenta, authorized by Malcador the Sigillite himself for Primarch-level access only, illustrates a strategic function deemed vital to Legion cohesion. We see the formula laid bare: inter-Legion tension, a constant and corrosive force. Whether the haughty perfectionism of the Emperor's children or the stoic pride of the Imperial fists, these frictions between demigods threatened the Great Crusade from within. The countermeasure was not a weapon or a stratagem, but a man. Torgaddon's levity. His irrepressible humor and relentless mockery, symbolized by the laughing mask fused to a blood-flecked chainsword, served as the critical agent of de-escalation. The second captain was the essential social glue, the one indispensable court jester in a brotherhood of kings, whose jokes held the line where bolters could not. This mechanism, Torgaddon's very soul quantified as a strategic asset, was a point of stability in an increasingly unstable fraternity. A single human point of failure upon which the fragile peace of monsters depended. One must wonder if the Sigillite, in sealing this record, already foresaw what would happen when the laughter finally stopped. And so, while Abaddon provided the choleric fury and Torgaddon the sanguine heart, the Warmaster's inner circle required a counterbalance, a mind of ice and calculation, a living reflection of the Primarch himself, but one devoid of passion. They called him the phlegmatic mirror. Horus Aximand, 5th captain of the 16th Legion, known throughout the Great Crusade as Little Horus for the uncanny, almost unnerving physical likeness he bore to his genetic father. He was the quiet, brooding tactician of the Mournival. As this archival entry, authorized by Malcador the Sigillite for Primarch-level access only, illustrates, Aximand approached both warfare and politics as an exact science. He saw the grand stage of the galaxy as a regicide board, every action a calculated move. The branching paths shown here are not mere decoration. They represent his mind at work, charting every probability, every potential loss, every avenue to victory. He was the mastermind of the Mournival's political utility, the one who translated the Warmaster's charisma into tangible diplomatic and strategic leverage, stripping away all emotion in favor of cold, absolute pragmatism. But a mind that treats loyalty as just another variable in a grand equation is a fragile thing. What happens when the master of the game makes a move that defies all logic? A move so monstrous that it shatters the very board upon which the science of war is played. For a perfect mirror only reflects the light it is shown, and darkness was beginning to fall. To truly comprehend the fall of the Warmaster, one must first dissect the council he built to reflect his own soul. This was the Mournival. Not merely a cabinet of warriors, but, as this classified 16th Legion document reveals, an engineered alloy of personalities, a living psychological matrix. The system was as elegant as it was potent. 4 humors, 4 archetypes, a complete spectrum of human response to advise and temper the Primarch. First, Ezekyle Abaddon, the choleric waxing crescent, whose role as the sword embodied the Legion's aggression. His fatal flaw, as noted here, was hubris. Opposing him was Tarik Torgaddon, the sanguine full moon. He was the shield, the master of de-escalation, whose jovial nature concealed a devastating blind loyalty. Then Horus Aximand, the waning crescent, a reflection of the Warmaster himself. His phlegmatic temperament made him the mind, the strategist, yet he was cursed with an unshakable melancholy. Finally, Garviel Loken, the new moon. His melancholic nature cast him as the conscience, the necessary voice of doubt in the council, but his devotion to truth was ultimately crippled by naivety. The document calls it a matrix, a functioning system, but look closer. Hubris, blind loyalty, melancholy, naivety, these are not mere character defects, they are tactical vulnerabilities. It was a perfect system of checks and balances, yet one designed with its own self-destruction coded into its very foundation, waiting only for the right poison to be introduced. To advise a Primarch is to stand in the shadow of a god, and Horus sought counselors, not mere adjutants. This crucible, the Mournival, was designed to filter the base metal of legionary command, seeking something far more precious than simple victory. Observe the filtration of souls. Luke's Sedere, a blade of unmatched sharpness, was the first to be rejected. His path, arrow-straight, met an immediate and unyielding barrier. He was deemed too battle-hungry, a blunt instrument for a role that demanded surgical precision. Then came Eacton Cruz, the sycophant, the half-heard. His path took him deeper, his words a pleasing and affirming echo of the Warmaster's own desires. But the Council of Rogel Dawn had been explicit. Horus did not need another blade, nor did he need an echo chamber. He needed a conscience. And so Cruz, the echo, was silenced. It was Garviel Loken whose path proved viable, twisting through the trials. His martial worth was undeniable, but here, in this final selection, he was chosen to be that conscience. The diagram is deceptively simple, a funnel that takes 3 and yields 1. But look closer at what truly emerges from this brutal calculus of character. It is not truth, it is not wisdom. The single element distilled from this entire process, the very foundation of the new Mournival, is doubt. And so the Mournival was more than the Warmaster's echo. It was his crucible, an engine designed not merely to execute his will, but to test it, to forge it in the fires of dissent. This process is what the late iterator Kirill Sinderman theorized as the architecture of doubt. As this restricted archival entry from the 16th Legion shows, the input was always the Warmaster's ambition. His grand designs were fed into a critical filter, what Sinderman identified as the Naismith's doubt, embodied by Captain Garviel Loken. Drawing from ancient Terran political concepts, likely from historical records like the Sumatrian dynasts, Horus appointed Loken to question everything, to find fault, and to articulate the counterposition. A flawed strategy would face Loken's logic and emerge as refinement. A fundamentally corrupt one would be met with rejection. As Sinderman so grimly noted, only a weapon which questions its use could be of any value in that role. A sophisticated system of checks and balances, proving Horus's once unquestionable brilliance. But such an architecture is only as strong as its foundation. What happens to the Naismith when the ambition he is meant to refine is no longer noble? What becomes of the filter when the source itself has been poisoned by darker designs? Even a Primarch could recognize the danger inherent in their own kind. The sheer galaxy-spanning scale of their father's crusade placed pressures upon them that no mortal mind could fathom, breeding a unique form of certitude. For Horus, the brightest of them all, this self-confidence was his greatest weapon, and his most profound vulnerability. This archival entry, logged under the Mournival of the 16th Legion and bearing the magenta classification of Malcador the Sigillite, contains a private conversation of immeasurable weight. It is the Praetorian of Terror, Rogel Dawn, speaking to Captain Garviel Loken. Dawn's words are a demigod's warning. My brother Horus needs a voice of reason in his ear if he is to rein in his eagerness. A man, even a Primarch, is only as good as the counsel he receives, especially if he is utterly self-confident. Here, Dawn does not question the Warmaster's authority. He validates the vital necessity of Loken's role. For a being of such terrifying scale, whose every decision reshaped civilizations, an honest, dissenting voice was not a luxury, but a structural requirement to stave off catastrophic hubris. Dawn saw the precipice and trusted a mortal to help his brother steer away from it. The great, unspoken tragedy of the Imperium is this: a voice of reason is meaningless if it is no longer heard. And what becomes of a demigod when he decides he no longer needs an anchor?
But the Mournival was never merely an advisory board. The truth, as archived records from the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet attest, was a far more calculated and sinister mechanism. They were not advisors. They were, in function and in execution, his political attack dogs. and their method was an anatomy of ambush. It was a masterful piece of political theater, played out in the strategy chambers of a dozen different campaigns. The process began with the trap. A member of the Mournival, often the bluntest among them, would publicly berate an imperial commander for some perceived failure, no matter how slight. Then came the pressure. The mortal commander, humiliated before his peers, would face the cold, silent judgment of the Astartes, feeling the palpable weight of their potential wrath. In that terrifying moment, their career, even their life, hung by a thread. And then, at the peak of the tension, came the savior. Horus Lupercal, the Warmaster himself, would intervene. With a gesture, he would silence his own Mournival, chastising them for their harshness. He would offer mercy, a word of encouragement, and restore the commander's honor. The result was inevitable. Not just obedience, but unquestioning loyalty and adoration, cementing the Warmaster as the benevolent peacemaker, universally beloved. This mechanism, perfected over decades of crusade, secured Horus's power base, transforming professional loyalty into something akin to fervent worship. But a tool designed to manipulate allies for the cause of compliance could just as easily be turned to manipulate them for the cause of rebellion. The question, therefore, was no longer if this loyalty could be tested, but against whom it would ultimately be aimed. A secret must have its symbol, a conspiracy its currency. This tarnished token, bearing the Chthonian wolf, was the coin of the warrior lodges. An emblem of brotherhood, so they claimed, yet marked by a smear of blood and a promise sworn in darkness. This shadow confraternity was born, as so many heresies are, from a mix of noble ideals and insidious influence. The feral, shamanistic culture of Davin provided the seed, but it was the disgraced Word-Bearers Legion, master manipulators of faith, who nurtured it. They offered a parallel fraternity, a place where rank held no sway, a dark mimicry of the Warmaster's own Mournival. But where the Mournival offered counsel, the lodges demanded esoteric oaths. Their foundation was not brotherhood, but strictly occult, a web of secrets spun between warriors. It was a truth Captain Garviel Loken would only uncover after witnessing the unspeakable, the horrific demonic possession of Sergeant Xavier Jubal. To discover such a rot within the heart of the Legion was a horror, but for Loken, the greater dread was only just beginning to dawn, to wonder how many hands had accepted this coin, and how many brothers were already lost to him in the shadows. It was here, in the chasm between sworn duty and whispered fraternity, that the schism took root. An axis of belief, a fault line running directly through the concept of brotherhood itself, mapping the soul of a legion poised at the brink of damnation. Observe the vectors of loyalty and sedition. On one axis, transparency, from the open truth of imperial doctrine down into the corrosive depths of occult secrecy. On the other, structure, from the formal hierarchy of the Great Crusade's command chain to the radical notion of absolute equality. Imperial command sits where it must, hierarchical, yet sworn to transparency. The Mournival, by its very design, was a noble experiment, an attempt at a council of equals operating in the light. But it was the warrior lodges that embodied the fatal paradox. They mirrored the promise of equality, yet achieved it through clandestine rites, hidden in darkness. It was this fundamental contradiction that Captain Garviel Loken could not tolerate. While his sworn brothers, Aximand and Torgaddon, saw only camaraderie, Loken saw the rot beneath. For him, absolute equality meant nothing if it was born of shadows. He recognized a forgotten imperial maxim: secrecy is the enemy of truth. Loken's conviction was more than a matter of principle. It was an act of prophecy.
but he could not yet know the true nature of the secret he opposed. He saw a corruption of philosophy, a betrayal of the open hand. He did not see the hidden hand that guided it. For a secret is never kept for its own sake. It is a weapon waiting to be aimed.
Observe the fulcrum. In the grand calculus of power, a ruler believes he can weigh truth against shadow, placing reason on one side of the scale and secrecy on the other, and somehow maintain a perfect equilibrium. This was the fatal arrogance of the Warmaster. To this end, Horus balanced his rule upon two distinct brotherhoods. One was the Mournival, the designated soul of his legion. It was, by design, an architecture of doubt, reason, and open truth, where even a Primarch's command could be questioned. This was the Naismith's Charter, a council meant to shine the light of clarity. But on the other side of the scale lay the Lodges. This was the Legion's Shadow, an architecture of secrecy, pride, and occult faith. In these clandestine gatherings, whispers replaced debate, and unity was forged not in loyalty to the Imperium, but in shared secrets and hidden oaths. The fundamental tragedy of the Horus heresy is etched here, in this flawed design. The belief that light and shadow could be held in equal measure was a delusion. The whispers in the dark proved heavier than the voice of reason, for pride and forbidden knowledge offer a gravitational pull that honest doubt can never match. The scale did not just tip, it shattered, and plunged a galaxy into 10,000 years of night. Here ends this archival record on the eve of damnation. May the Emperor protect.